This Dondozo looks clean until you tilt it under the light and look at it through a microscope, and we can see all those errors here. Now this is a long video, so here are the timestamps if you want to skip to your favorite part, but we're going to start with centering. Now before you even start grading, you need to determine who you're sending that card to, and then what is their tolerance levels to get a Gem Mint 10 for the front and back. And right here is a few examples of PSA, tag, and degree for their front and back tolerances, but we'll go into exactly what that means throughout this video. So when I got this card, I put it on my Epson scanner, I scanned it, and then there's a company called TAGGrading, which I love using their centering tool. I'm not sponsored by them. I put it into their system, and then at the bottom here, you can see what you would get for the front of the card from a grading perspective. At the top, you can see the left, right, and top and bottom, and so that's really important stuff for us to understand. So if we're talking about what I just showed you previous to this, we can talk about the tolerance levels, and that's what's determining that these grades are available. So when we're looking at the left and right, you're talking about how close you are to getting to 50%. So taking both sides into consideration, there's a 6% difference. So from 47 to 53, there's 6%, right? What I was showing earlier with PSA and tag have the same front tolerance, which is a 10% tolerance. And so that 6% does work really well for the left and right. For the top and bottom, there's only a 2% variation here. So that works out well again for us. That's within 10%. And when we're talking about submitting to a grading company, they're going to go through the worst percentage you have. So in this case, they would go by the 6%, not the 2%. However, this means this is a Gem Mint 10 for centering on the front only for PSA and tag. Now, the back of the card has some weird things going on here with it, but we'll talk about that in a moment. The left and right and the top and bottom have the exact same percentages on the front. So I thought that was really interesting. I thought I messed up when I did this, but I didn't. The back is also a PSA 10. It also falls into tag 10 as well as actually DegreeGrading 10. DegreeGrading is a lot more conservative with their percentages. So 6% is all they can afford, and 6% being the worst, that actually does fall in a Gem Mint 10. Now, I don't know how this is actually going to be handled by grading companies, so I'm really interested to see how DegreeGrading handles this when they get this back. But if you look closely at the border of the card, you'll notice that that border width is subtly changes when you're moving up the card. So that tells us that the card was slightly cut at an angle. It's not truly off-centered though. The key thing here is that the front borders are clean and parallel for the borders, and that's what really matters to me here. It's already a Gem Mint tolerance just based off of that. Graders typically do cover this as a front eye appeal issue, and the front being fine is great, so the back is not as significant of an issue. This is typically considered a factory cut variance on the back alone. It doesn't actually impact the centering grade unless there's like a corner distortion, like it flares out too much and it's very obvious. In this case, it doesn't really do that here. But again, I've never submitted a card that had this yet, so I'm really eager to get this back and see what that actually does to a true grade. So the same thing applies on the back that it does as the front. They have the exact same dimensions, and the back is more lenient for every grading company. So going back to the tolerance, PSA has a 50% tolerance, tag has a 30% tolerance, and a DegreeGrading has a 6% tolerance. And 6% being the worst based off of this issue that we're looking at is actually within the Gem Mint tolerance. But I'm interested again to see how that impacts this whole thing overall. Now onto the surface, which in my opinion is the most difficult part to get into. The first thing I like to do is take a microfiber cloth and clean off the front and back of the card. That way we get rid of any smudges, oils, or anything that's left over on the card. And then I like to take it underneath an LED light and then just flip it back and forth to look for things. But it's very difficult to see, especially for cards that are a special illustration or an illustration rare, or the entire card in front of the card is a hollow and it's very, very vibrant in color. It makes it difficult to find like dots or colored saturation issues or any kind of print defects. So when I'm going through the front of the card, I'm doing my best to start on the borders and then kind of working my way around that just to see if I can see any dots or silvering on the border, which in this case, I did find some silvering on it. And then I went ahead and I put it underneath the microscope just to confirm that I can actually see that. And it's incredibly small. The only reason I'm able to see this dot is because it's underneath an LED light. But on that front right border, we do see two small silvering dots along that. And I see some 4 dings or specks on the top border area with about 2 around the top right surface. They're incredibly small, again, microscopic. So I don't think it's going to have a necessarily significant impact on the card surface overall, but it is something to mention that could be found underneath the microscope. Additionally, on the back, we can see that there's quite a few dots along the left side border, and those are just like factory indentations. I'm not exactly sure what they are, but they appear a lot on the card on that left border, and then there's one that's more apparent on the top. It almost looks like someone took the top of a pen and kind of poked it, or a needle, and just kind of poked it in there. So I'm not quite sure what that categorizes as whether it's an indentation or whether it's a dot. I'm not 100% sure, but because it's on the back, I don't think it's going to impact it as much as it would necessarily on other parts of the card. Now we're moving on to the corners and edges, which are truly killers of cards if you have white specks or indentations on the corner. But we do see some silvering going across that front right side border, as well as near the bottom border as well. There's a lot of things actually I called out here. On the front, we had 3 silvering spots on the top of the card. We had 5 on the right front of the card. And then we have some edge defects on the top of the left of the card as well on the back. And then another thing I did notice, and I looked at it through the microscope, is I saw some darkening on the actual corner of the card. It looks like a dent, and I wasn't sure because if it's a dent, it automatically drops the overall card to a minimum of a 6. So I don't know if it's a dent, and that's what I think it is originally at first. And then I kind of put it through ChatGPT just to get some help on that. And what it said was, a dent is when it's pushed into the card, and I think it's debatable on what this mark here is actually a push into the card, but it says that this mark actually sits on top of the surface and changes with the light, which tells us it's a factory print line, not a damaged card. So I guess I can kind of see where the ChatGPT is coming in, saying that it might be a print line. I've never seen one like that. So the other thing it called out was like when it's going through the printing press, it sometimes can just saturate the card too much and increase that print line, and this one was just overly saturated. I don't know, so I can absolutely see this coming back as like a dent. That's what I personally think it is. ChatGPT says it's not, and it's a print line. If it's a print line, it's definitely going to reduce the rating a lot less than if it was a dent. So a lot of this is in the air. This is probably going to be my worst predicted card that I'll have for now, because the more errors it gets, the more we have to figure out how it impacts it directly and how much it lowers the percentage down. So overall for the card, this is what I predict for the centering, the surface, the corners and edges, and then from there I would predict this grade. Now to the final section: is this card actually valued at a good amount, and is it worth grading or not? Now, the first question I like to ask myself is, what is the actual value of the card, and are you purchasing it or are you pulling it? Because if you're pulling it, you're saving a lot of money. If you're purchasing it, you're going to lose some money. In this case, this card is pretty inexpensive, so it's not that big of a deal. But the second question we have to ask ourselves is, how much is the grading service you're going through? Are you going through DegreeGrading? Are you going through PSA or TAG? I know that TAG and PSA both have affiliate shippings you can do. So there are, if you go on a TAG website, you can find some places around you that can have the card sent to TAG for you and sent back, and it's significantly cheaper. I think the location near me does $20 per card with a $5 shipping in total. And I believe GameStop is the exact same, which it's $20 per card with a $5 shipping. So if you're shipping multiple cards, you're going to save some money, but $5 is really not that expensive, especially if you're going through a GameStop or an affiliated provider. Now, the other question you have to ask yourself is, how much is shipping to and from a provider or the grader? So in this case, PSA, they do charge you for, like you have to pay your own money up front to send the card and ship to them. Then they have to grade it. Then they have to ship it back, and there's a shipping return charge as well. Now, I can alleviate a lot of that problem just by going into Google and searching GameStop PSA. And then it'll tell you a link that you can put your zip code in, and it'll tell you the closest GameStops to you that can provide that service. And it's significantly cheaper. It's way more expensive if you ship it to them versus going through GameStop. There is security by doing it yourself, but it's going to cost you considerably more to do that service. Unfortunately, I have to finish this video a little bit differently than I normally do. I usually do a whole price breakdown, but I just spent the last 5 hours trying to edit this video and put everything together and do recording for it. And so I don't have time to actually do the grade analysis like I want to for the actual cash value of this. So we're gonna do something very easy. I have to leave here and I have to drive 8.5 hours. So I apologize, guys. So I appreciate you working through this with me. So when we're looking at the card, and we'll switch back to the screen, We can see that the card is worth about $9 right now raw. So if you're looking at sending this to PSA, the card comes back as a 10, you'd get $180 for worth of that card. You spent $9 on the card, plus you had any kind of fees. If you went through GameStop, it's $20 plus $5 shipping. So you're still making way more than you probably than you actually put in. So if you're looking at my card with my estimate, if it has a dent and everything associated with that, I think it'll at the best get a 5. And there's not even a 5 value here for the card. So it's probably just going to be even less than the actual value of a raw card. Now let's say it does not actually have a dent, it truly is a factory issue and it doesn't impact the grade. I could see this coming back as an 8. If it comes back as an 8, we're getting 1526, so we are losing money regardless of the service that we're using. Hopefully that was helpful information for you guys. If you like this sort of content, please leave a follow. I'm starting to get these graded cards back now, so you'll see me actually doing the card reveals. I have 5 of them already in, so I already cracked them and resubmitted them to PSA, but those episodes will be coming out over the course of the next 2 to 3 weeks. But thank you so much for following my journey. Until next time, keep guessing that grade.